Chapter 4. By mid-morning the sun had burned away the fog from the valley land east of Dorning. Theo calculated he had trudged only a few miles, but he was already weary. He had, thus far, come upon no travelers in either direction, for which he was grateful. Being obliged to give an account of himself was the last thing in the world he wanted. He had already done violence to a man. He did not wish to compound this by doing violence to the truth. He had never told a lie. It occurred to him that sooner or later he would have to lie outrageously. The best he could do was put off the moment as long as possible. He had begun thinking it might be wiser to stay off the road altogether when he saw a dappled gray mare trotting toward him. Harness leathers trailing, the horse whinnied and tossed her head, but made no objection when he caught the reins and pulled her up. The animal clearly had an owner, but Theo's fatigue outweighed that consideration. "Hold still, old girl. Whoever you belong to, I'm sorry. I'm a wanted fugitive," he bitterly added. "I might as well be a horse thief, too." He climbed awkwardly astride. Knowing as much of horsemanship as he did of behaving like a criminal, he nevertheless managed to turn the animal eastward, glad for one piece of good fortune. His good fortune blistered him before he had ridden a mile. His legs strained. He was footsore where he had no feet. At last he climbed down and walked. The horse ambled behind him, fondly blowing down the back of his neck, nudging him when his pace slackened. Before he could decide how to free himself of this animal, who was driving him instead of the other way around, he saw, past a bend in the road, a coach pulled onto the grassy shoulder. The doors hung open, some baggage had been spread on the ground, the shafts were empty. On top of the vehicle perched the dwarf, a stubby clay pipe between his teeth. Count Las Bambas, sweating in his shirt-sleeves, sat glumly on a boulder. Sighting Theo, the dwarf sprang like an acrobat. "I told you she'd come back one way or the other. If you'd let her be instead of chasing her like an idiot, she wouldn't have run off in the first place." Las Bambas heaved himself up, nodding at Theo. "I see we have you to thank for finding this ungrateful creature. And so, you changed your mind about reporting yourself to the authorities. Very sensible." "I would have," Theo began. He faltered, as if saying the words could somehow make it more final than it was. "But they killed my master." "I'm sorry, my boy. A hard knock. Where does that leave you?" "With a warrant out for me. The police as much as ordered me to run away. The royal inspector's alive, though." "And no doubt in better case than we are. Thanks to the roads in your part of the country, a wheel came loose. Then Musket carelessly allowed my steed— Friska! Friska! None of that!" This was shouted at the horse, nipping at Las Bambas from the rear. The count withdrew to a safe distance, while Musket brought the animal to the shafts. "A civilian beast," the count explained. "Nothing like my charger when I served in the Salamanca Lancers." Theo had noticed a heap of objects beside the coach and gave a questioning look at what appeared to be a collection of arms and legs. "Ah, those," said Las Bambas. "Remarkably natural, you must agree. Excellently done." He picked up one of the arms and showed it to Theo. It was hollow, made of painted cloth stretched over a light, flexible wooden frame. "These are often useful in my profession, sometimes indeed essential." "But your pamphlet said you were a doctor." "As occasion demands. I have, my boy, spent my life in constant study. Initiate in the Delphic mysteries, in the grand arcana, adviser to his altered serenity, the Prince of Trebizondia. I have been instructed by the great Copta himself in summoning spirits of the dead, with, naturally, a reasonable amount of help from the living." "You mean," said Theo, "you're no doctor at all." "Don't take such a narrow view," replied the count. "I assure you, I have lightened more suffering with my tubs of magnetized water than most esteemed surgeons have done with lancets and leeches. Those who, for some inscrutable reason, stubbornly refuse to benefit, if I didn't cure them, at least I didn't harm them, which cannot be said for a number of your learned bloodletters." The count reached into his pocket. "It is apparent to me that you suffer from a headache at this very instant. Am I correct?" Theo's head, in fact, had been throbbing all morning. He admitted this to Las Bambas, who nodded and replied, "I knew it without asking." He opened his hand, revealing a black pebble the size of an egg. "This, my boy, is worth more than its weight in gold. A priceless fragment from the fabled Mountain of the Moon in Kazakhstan. I need only touch it to your brow. Thus, your headache will vanish." A whistle from musket interrupted the Count. He turned and squinted down the road where the dwarf was pointing. Theo stiffened. A troop of royal cavalry was bearing toward them. "Make a run for it," ordered Las Bambas. "No, that will rouse their suspicions. We'll have to brazen it out." He rummaged in a pile of clothing and tossed some garments to Theo. "Get behind the coach. Put these on. If there's any question, say you're a Trebizonian." "I can't speak Trebizonian." "Neither can they. Very well, you'll be a mute Trebizonian. Get on with it. Not a word out of you. Do as I say." Theo ducked around the coach and pulled on the costume, a long striped robe which, by its smell, had not been laundered for years, and a tall, cylindrical headpiece with a tassel. The troop halted. The captain turned his mount, casting a wary eye on the vehicle. Las Bambas, who had disappeared inside, now climbed out to face the officer. The Count was resplendent in a general's gold-braided uniform, its breast glittering with medals. "What seems to be the difficulty?" blustered the Count as the officer sprang down and brought his hand to a rigid salute. "Beg to report, none, sir." The captain had gone as crimson as the Count's uniform. "Forgive me, sir, for disturbing you. My men are going into garrison, and I was ordered to keep an eye open along the way. A fugitive from justice, claiming to be a printer's apprentice—" "What? What?" shouted Las Bambas. "What nonsense are you mumbling? Speak up, sir! Look me in the eye when you address me." "A fugitive, sir," blurted the troop captain. "Wanted for high crimes." "Oh, why didn't you say so in the first place?" Las Bambas glared at him. "Well, you don't see anyone like that around here, do you? I am General Samballo, on a special mission from the court. Beg to report, sir. I saw an individual near your coach." "My servant?" The Count beckoned to Theo. "This fellow? Trebizonian, as you see. Hardly an apprentice of any sort, eh? Can't speak, only grunts. I spared his life on my last campaign. He's been devoted to me ever since." The officer stared at Theo. Las Bambas went on. "A faithful creature, as far as you can trust any of these savages. Strong as a bull, though you wouldn't think it looking at him. Poor devil, he's quite mad. Calm and peaceful in the ordinary way of things. What sets him wild is officers with horses. Even I can't control him then." Taking the Count's hint, Theo growled and bared his teeth in what he hoped would pass for a ferocious grimace. Terrified, at the same time he felt himself an utter fool. "You should have seen what he did to my last aide." Las Bambas gravely shook his head. "Those Trebizonians go straight for the throat, you know." The troop captain stood at attention, but it was all the man could do to stay there. Las Bambas held the officer with a stern eye, in no hurry to let him escape. "Have you any money?" The captain blinked. "Sir?" "If you do, I suggest giving it to him immediately. It may exercise a calming effect. They understand the offering of money as a gesture of friendship." The officer pulled out a handful of silver coins and one gold piece from his tunic and flung them at Theo. Las Bambas nodded approval. "That should hold him. Not long for such a small amount. Carry on with your duties. I'll assume the responsibility of watching for the runaway. Dismissed." The captain threw a ragged salute, scrambled onto his mount, and plunged back to his men, bawling for them to follow at the gallop. Las Bambas watched until the troop was well out of sight. He gave Theo a smile of satisfaction. "You made a splendid Trebizonian. For a moment I thought you were actually going to bite him." "You got us a gold piece into the bargain," added Musket. "That's pure profit." "Yes, you pulled it off, my boy," said Las Bambas. "But you had a close call. I confess I sweated a little myself. You might be wise to stay with us for a time, for your own safety. Though, it also occurs to me I could use a bright young assistant. The possibilities are unlimited. As to wages, we must leave that question temporarily open." "No, thank you. It's good of you, but—" Theo hesitated. Until now, he had never imagined himself away from Dorning. The possibility had never existed. With Anton dead and himself homeless, his best course was to stay on the move. The prospect in fact excited him, all the more strongly because it was new. "I doubt you'll have a better offer," said the Count. "Why, you'll launch yourself on an entirely new profession." The Count's profession, Theo knew, was sheer fakery. Las Bambas was a fraud, and worse, proud of it. Nevertheless, against all reason, against all he had read and Anton had taught him, he could not help liking the rogue. "All right," he said finally. "I'll go with you." "Excellent!" cried the Count. "Pack up and we'll be on our way. Musket will explain your duties." As soon as the artificial arms and legs and the rest of the baggage had been stowed, Las Bambas rolled himself into the coach. Theo clambered to join Musket on the box. The dwarf clicked his tongue, slapped Frisca with the reins, and set off at a speed that took Theo's breath away. With his stubby legs jutting straight in front of him, hat jammed low on his brow and his eyes gleaming, Musket looked every bit a demon coachman. Theo hung on for dear life. The coach swayed and jolted, wind whistled in his ears. What his destination might be he had no inkling, but they were going there very rapidly. He scarcely noticed his headache had vanished.